سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن واناكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله وأن يرزقني تلب ثاجي مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم. وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصابا بمصيبته مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رضيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكنة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضائف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله عبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارة صلواتكم. Everyone together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا، ثم العن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم العن يزيد خامسا، والعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد وشمرا وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. سجود. اللهم لك الحمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to everyone at Maghrib. This will be the night of the 2nd of Muharram. We are once again here together to prepare our hearts and our minds to bear witness to the tragedy of Karbala. As always, we're going to begin with the recitation of the Holy Quran. And we'll bring up Brother Iman Kashifur to lead us in that recitation with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala
Muhammad. Inshallah, I'll be reciting from Surah Al-Imran, Ayah 169, for those who would like to follow along. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا، بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون. فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله، ويستبشرون الذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون يستبشرون بنعمة من الله وفضل وأن الله لا يضيع أجر المؤمنين الذين استجابوا لله والرسول من بعد ما أصابهم القرح للذين أحسنوا منهم واتقوا أجر عظيم الذين قال لهم الناس إن الناس قد جمعوا لكم فاخشوهم فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله وفضل لم يمسسهم سوء واتبعوا رضوان الله والله ذو فضل عظيم إنما ذلكم الشيطان يخوف أولياءه فلا تخافوهم وخافون إن كنتم مؤمنين صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
Ahsan. Thank you, Brother Iman Kashipur. Let's send one more loud salawat for Brother Iman. Before we continue on, as you've seen with last night and inshallah in the upcoming nights, it's going to get only more and more packed in this hall. So we ask for the sisters to all move up and the brothers to all move up towards me. There's a lot of space here in the front. So let's all move up with a loud salawat. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So for everyone to be aware, this is going to be the beginning of the Farsi program in the Blue Hall. So if you're a Farsi speaker or want to be part of the Farsi program, that's beginning in the Blue Hall now. You go across where the shoe racks are and keep walking, and you'll see that program starting there, inshallah. We want to recognize our sponsor for this evening. It's the family of Brother Naveed Ibrahim. We request that everyone here recite a Fatiha for their marhumeen and the marhumeen of all of those present. Fatiha. So as with previous years, inshallah, in these nights we're going to be having poetry, short speeches, and various recitations. If you're interested in being part of that or the post-speech Noha and Azadari, please let the organizers know in advance so they can slot you in for a time slot and do that. If you let them know the day of, it's possible some other people will have signed up and you won't get a spot. So please let everyone know, inshallah. The first presentation today is going to be from Qasim Hamadani. He's going to be giving a poem in honor of Muslim ibn Aqil. We'll bring him up with a loud salawat. And his brother. One more salawat.
So today I'm going to be reciting something in honor of Hazrat Muslim ibn Aqil. Salawat. Oh my Hussain, tell me, will I ever see you again? Brought to Kufa, they said that they were friends. I turn around, thousands prayed behind me, now an empty crowd. Now I'm all alone, how can I make you proud? From door to door, every knock I feel weaker as they ignore. I lose hope and finally fall to her floor. I stand and pray till break of day, wishing you'd stay. I'd give my life, I'd give my all, I'd give my soul for Hussein's call. I'd give my life, I'd give my life. Outdoor at home, praying all night that I won't be left alone. Morning comes and I betray my fate's unknown. They corner me, a lion that they're facing, so I'll never flee. It would make you proud if only you could see. On me they close, showered with their swords and spears and then with stones. Your betrayal, that pain is worse than broken bones. I'll fight for you till my time's through. What will you do? I'd give my life, I'd give my all, I'd give my soul for Hussein's call. I'd give my life, I'd give my life. They bind my hands, wounded so badly now I can barely stand. Dragged to their palace, my blood staining the sand. With them I've bled, I feel it inside me, soon we'll both be dead. Pour a cup of water, then it feels blood red. I say goodbye, turn towards Karbala and began to cry. Tossed off the rooftop into the crimson sky. I beg and plead till I can't breathe that you won't leave. I'd give my life, I'd give my all, I'd give my soul for Hussein's call. I'd give my life, I'd give my life, I'd give my life. Salawat.
Let's send one more loud salawat. That was excellent. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Next, we're going to have a salam from Muhammad Ibrahim. We'll bring up Muhammad with a loud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salawat.
Salam, 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 salam. They left you all alone, even those you had known. Their hearts were made of stone. Oh, Muslim, they couldn't realize that's you they agonized, that's you they left to die. Oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim. You had come all the way to make sure they don't stray, but you they did betray. Oh, Muslim, Hussain knows of your plight. He's weeping day and night, wishing you reunite. Oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim. Like a lion you fought, the soldiers were distraught. You killed them on the spot. Oh, Muslim, how much they wounded you, but your power they knew, and how they then withdrew. Oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim, oh, Muslim. How painful was your death, you gasped for every breath. They then cut off your head. Oh, Muslim, They threw you from the roof. Nobody disapproved. They all look so amused. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Even your two children, Ibrahim, Muhammad, beheaded in a stream. Oh, Muslim. O people of Kufa, did you not hear Zahra wailing in pain and awe? Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Oh, Muslim. Salawat.
Ahsant. Let's send one more loud salawat for Muhammad. So we're going to have a few general announcements, inshallah. We're going to go through these, so hopefully we'll have some housekeeping points for everyone to keep in mind. First of all, inshallah, make an effort to arrive on time. If you notice today, we started at exactly 7 p.m. The goal is to always start exactly on time, and the speech will be at pretty much at the exact time that we've said. So the goal is always to be here on time so you don't miss out on anything, whether it's here or the Farsi program in the hall or the Urdu program afterwards. The second is, before you enter the hall, please take off your shoes and put them on the shoe racks outside. It'll remove any tripping hazards, any issues people have when they come in, and just leave more space for everyone to walk, inshallah. Also, just make sure your cell phones are off. If it goes off during the program, during Shaykh's speech, it's going to be a distraction, so we appreciate it if you can turn them off, inshallah. All the reciters should pre-register with the moderator. I mentioned that point earlier. Let us know so that we can put you in. Otherwise, you may not be able to get a slot on the day that you want. There's going to be a children's program this year. If you'd like, and you have kids between the ages of 5 and 10, if you want them to participate, drop them off at 7:25 p.m. Once the program has reached capacity, the doors will close and your kids can't go in. In all other cases, your kids have to be with you. So the parking lot, the other halls, the the little paths in between, you want to make sure that you have your kids with you. Don't keep them out of your eyesight. They shouldn't just be by themselves walking around or running around. They should always be with you so we can keep an eye on them. We want to encourage everyone to volunteer for cleaning the center. After the English program is going to be the Urdu program, so we want to clean up quickly. Please volunteer and help if you can. And related to that point, we currently have a new Khadim program for these nights. There are people who have volunteered. They have a badge on that says they're one of the Khadim crew. They're doing a lot of work in helping. So if they ask you to help, please help them out. If they don't ask, still help them out. And if they give you an instruction, they're doing it because they're trying to help out. So please try to accommodate them if they do that. And the last point is, as with all of our programs, proper Islamic attire is requested and required for all men and women. Before we continue on again, we're going to ask everyone to come up. There's about 8 to 10 feet of space in front of me, so please come up towards where I am with a loud salawat. We are now going to be moving on to our lecture, inshallah. This year we have the blessing of having with us Shaykh Bilal Hussain to enlighten us with these lectures during the 10 nights. We got a taste of that yesterday, and we're really fortunate to have him here with us. A little bit of a bio for him. He was born and raised in New York. He completed his undergraduate studies at Temple, and he left a career in corporate finance and spent 7 years studying in the Hawza in Najaf. Currently, he serves the communities of New York and New Jersey and is in charge of Beit al-Qaim Center in Delran, New Jersey. He works with interfaith groups, the youth and elderly, and hopes to introduce Islamic teachings and values to our society at large. He's the managing director of the Zahra Trust, a non-profit humanitarian relief organization operating for widows and orphans in need overseas. He also is the chairman of the Ahlul Bayt American Society, an organization designed to better serve our growing needs as the Shia community in the US, working to provide media content, social services, and infrastructure for the coming generations of Muslims in the United States. We're blessed to have him and will benefit from his lecture with a loud salawat.
رحم الله من يقرأ سورة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat is condolences to Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بذكرنا المسائب آل محمد. May Allah increase in our reward for commemorating the difficulties of Ahlul Bayt. One of the things that I like to do in these nights is to talk about some ahkam, some Islamic law, some different perspectives. And the reason for that is that there's no proper time to just focus on talking about ahkam and law and things that we should be paying attention to on simply a very dry basis that may otherwise not apply. And inshallah, in the next number of nights that we have, one of the issues that I want to begin with in talking about different aspects of fiqh is the importance of various issues relating to death. And the significance of this conversation, why it's an important conversation to have in this context, is that we're here, we're aware, and two, that when we are faced with a relative, a family member, or ourselves in the situation of death, sometimes we're so overcome by the difficulty that we're facing and the grief that we're facing, we don't think about what are the right things to be doing in that situation, and there's no counsel that can be taken at that point in time. So hence, having the opportunity to talk about some of the important things in terms of preparation for this reality. This death is just. It's a part of the existence of humanity, and it's something that we have to face. We'll mention some of the various ahkam that are associated with this that are important for us to pay attention to. And may Allah give us tawfiq to have khatma ala al-khair, to have a good completion to our lives. The first of these that we'll mention tonight is the importance, or three affairs that we'll mention tonight, begin with the first one, is in the preparation of death, the importance of a wasiyah. A wasiyah, or a will, while it's not wajib, is incredibly mustahab to possess. And it's incredibly important that someone should have this written out and their affairs to be disclosed in this. Now, many times, for example, when we talk about the idea of a wasiyah, they're a reaction that comes from either from the kids that say that I have a long time before I have to worry about this, or from others that comes from, Shaykh, I don't have anything, what am I going to leave as a wasiyah? But a wasiyah is more complex in Islam than simply saying, I have all this money and this is what I want to do with it. As a matter of fact, that idea of a wasiyah, that I have all this money and this is what I want to do with it, majority of that Allah takes care of for you. Why? Because ownership of something only lasts while you're alive. Once you're dead, you don't own anything. As a matter of fact, you can't even take care of yourself. How are you going to own something else? So the wasiyah technically has very little to do with what I want to do with what I own. Baba, you don't own anything anymore. You're done. What are you going to own? You're gone. This is an Islamic concept that says that no, after this it's gone, it's done. But Allah has a mercy upon us that He says, no, even after you're dead, I will give you ikhtiyar and freedom that you can control something of what you used to possess. It's a mercy from Allah. It's not a right. It's not an obligation. So which is why the wasiyah, more than talking about that, okay, you know, my son gets the Bugatti, my daughter gets the Corvette, my wife gets the mansion. Inshallah, may Allah give you that much. May you have the ability to do all these things. But realistically, that's not the purpose of the wasiyah. The actual purpose of the wasiyah is that if there is an obligation that remains on me, I have stated it. You see, when a person dies, they can't talk to you anymore, they can't tell you. But if, let's say, for example, I have some obligation that's due from me, whether that obligation is material, whether that obligation is spiritual, if I disclose it, my family can assist me. Many times it happens, someone passes away, what do? We hold a majlis for them. We hold a khatm Quran for them. And we take resources and we dedicate to them. Very good. But if that person had a wajibat that was remaining, would you rather hold a Quran khani in the majlis or take care of their wajibat? If that person had a right that they owed somebody, would you rather pay that right or would you rather spend it on a majlis? But I can't do that if it's not explained to me what my wajibat are. And that's one of the fundamentals of this wasiyah, is that use your wasiyah and indicate what are my wajibat. Do I have qada? Do I have something that's owed to someone? Do I have a fiscal responsibility? Do I have a spiritual responsibility? And make sure these items are detailed in the wasiyah. Along with that, whatever I have that remains in terms of my wealth, Allah says, I give you the ikhtiyar, the freedom to choose what to do with 30%, and you can do with 30% of it what you want to do after your expenses are taken care of. Meaning that if you want to do some amal al-khair, if you want to do a good deed, you want to have some thawab jariyah allocated for you, you want to do something different for yourself, or to do something in the favor of somebody else, that this 30% you get the freedom to choose. Sometimes you can use that 30% that's in your wasiyah, that for example, that establish a majlis for me, establish and add this, the Hussainiyah or the markaz that's being established. Other times, no. Other times it happens that someone who Allah has not dedicated a portion of your wealth to, you want to dedicate a portion of your wealth to them. For example, you have a nephew or a niece, very good boy, very good person. You want to leave something from your wealth to them to make sure that along with your children, this child is taken care of. You've taken care of an orphan, you took care of all of your children, that's their haqq, but something remained that you wanted to dedicate to this orphan that you were sponsoring in your life. That's what that 30% is for. This is something that we have, and a wasiyah is important to build out at every age, because life is not guaranteed to any of us. We don't know. So therefore we have this freedom and this availability. In the same way, for example, if I've borrowed the lawnmower from my neighbor, instead of that neighbor after my death coming and saying, hey, listen, your dad took my lawnmower, and my kid's saying, I don't know, he's been using the same lawnmower for the past 20 years. And the neighbor says, yes, he borrowed it 21 years ago from me. I don't know, man, 20 years is a long time, and we have this debate now, niza. Prevent that. Dictate, have I taken any authority from anyone? Have I taken somebody's property? Do I have someone's amana in my possession? Can you imagine the difficulty that you're holding someone's trust and you die and your children say, no, this is ours? And I say, no, we won't give it to you, it's ours. We never saw our father do or our mother do anything else with it. It was always ours. You borrow a pot and all of a sudden your kids are fighting over it. It can happen. Which is why it's important. Have a wasiyah, dictate these things, disclose these things. The second element that we mentioned is the association of, for example, that when it comes to the time of death, there is a condition called ihtidar. And this ihtidar is a condition in which a person is preparing for the final moments of death and that death is about to come upon them. In this condition of ihtidar, there are certain things that are prescribed for us. One of the things that's prescribed is that should someone be in a state of ihtidar, face them in the direction of Qibla. Facing in the direction of Qibla is done in such a way that the soles of your feet are facing Qibla, so that if a person sat up, their face would be facing the direction of Qibla. And this is known as Jihat al-Qibla, to take the direction of Qibla. Now what's interesting about this, are you guys okay? I'm going to go for a side a bit for a second. You guys all right? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. More? Closer? Oh, okay. Thought I did a good job this time. All right. Is that when we lay someone facing the direction of Qibla with their feet facing Qibla, that's not the way we bury someone. This is interesting because in the other madahib, that the same way that you lay someone who's about to die, or you do, for example, the ghusl of someone, you face them with their feet facing Qibla, what they do is when they go to the graveyard, they bury somebody in the same direction with the feet facing Qibla. When we bury someone with their right shoulder facing Qibla, not their feet facing Qibla. And this is one of the differences between the different schools of thought that exist. But this ihtidar and laying with your direction, okay. If I can please ask if we can move forward as well too. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I usually tell a joke about this, that they only give me a stick on Fridays, but today's Friday. So that's why I won't make that, because I say, you shouldn't be afraid of me. You can sit close to me. I don't have a stick, but on Fridays I do have a stick, so. When you lay someone in the direction facing Qibla in the moments of death, it's one of the things that's supposed to be an assistance for them in that situation. The second thing, if they happen to be home, one of the things that assists this person is lay them in the place where they used to pray. You see, the extraction of the soul from the body is painful. One of the things that alleviates some of that pain is that if there is a place of ibadah that's dedicated, to take the person to the place of ibadah to alleviate those difficulties. Generally speaking, the places of prayer in our houses, and we should have dedicated places of prayer in our house. Years ago when I started my studies, I sat with a Sayyid who was, kind of giving me advices as I was coming back to America for the first time. He says, one of the things that I wish the believers in the West knew, he says, when we watch TV, we see that they have these houses that have dedicated media rooms. You have a place for TV, and you have surround sound, and you have all these things. He says there should be no mu'min who does not have a place of salat in his house that's built and dedicated for the purpose of prayer. And that becomes something that's beneficial in this time of death as well too. The third thing is be conscious of the conversation that you have by someone who is in a state of ihtidar. When we go to see someone, for example, who is exceptionally sick, sometimes we're thinking about, how did this happen? What will happen to us after this? Who's taking care of their affairs? What's happening with the finances? Don't have this conversation near the person who's in a state of ihtidar. The only mention that should be taking place near that person is the remembrance of Allah, the remembrance of the Shahada, dhikr of Quran, dhikr of Allah and Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because that person now, all those material things are a true distraction. We say materialism is a distraction now. Imagine in your final moments, you're more worried about who's going to pay the electric bill and what's the password to the bank account, instead of wondering about the fact and saying that, am I ready to declare my oneness of Allah? Do I remember my Creator in this moment? So one of the assistances that we do for the person who's in that condition is be very conscious of the conversation you have around them. It's natural that there are material conversations about bills, about DNRs, about all these things. Do them away from the person. Don't have that conversation near someone who's in a state of death. Inshallah, we'll continue this discussion tomorrow night as well too. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The goal of our discussion is building a virtuous community. In the concept of building a virtuous community, why is this even necessary? Why is this our job? Now technically, Our job is just to live in society. And one of the things that's discussed very often, especially in our communities, is that how can it be possible to have this community if the Imam is not here leading it himself? And that if we take a look at the history of the A'immah, many A'immah didn't have the ability to build this community themselves. And how can you imagine that we can build a virtuous community? With the verse that we began our discussion with, we take a look and we see Allah describes and He says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَهُ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. Allah says in the Quran, and He makes a statement, Allah is the one who sends His messenger with guidance and the religion of truth, that He may cause it to prevail over all religions, وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ, though the polytheists may be averse to this. This verse has a great depth of meaning. But one of the basic fundamentals of this verse is to say is that the entire purpose of humanity is to build this virtuous community, and the Prophet and the divine guidance is the resource that is intended to establish that. Whenever we go to the process of building a community that has virtue and building a community that is righteous in its fundamental, we are following that example that Allah said, if I put the best of humanity on this earth, this is what they're meant to do. So if you want to be with the best of humanity, this is one of the focal points, that this message of Allah becomes the message of humanity and society. Now it's true that what we say is that there are promises in the Quran that are made that have not yet been fulfilled, and this is one of those promises that hasn't been fulfilled yet. When we look and we see that Allah makes a statement, أَرْسَلَهُ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, that this religion is to overcome all other religions. This is a promise Allah made that was not fulfilled in the life of Rasulullah, and it is a promise that yet remains, that in the truthfulness of the Quran, this has to take place at some point in time. And that in us, we believe that the remainder of Rasulullah, Sahib al-Asr Zaman, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, has the obligation to complete this as one of the promises on this earth. Now let me ask you something. If I was to be someone who wants to be from the supporters of this Imam, and I'm one of the ones who calls to this Imam, and I know what his obligation is to fulfill, is this is one of his obligations on this earth to fulfill. One of the ways that I prepare for the Imam is to build in that direction, to establish that example the Imam will establish. أفضل أعمال أمتي انتظار الفرج. The best of the actions of my nation, our Prophet would explain, is waiting for the coming of this relief. This intidhar, some people say, is just sit and wait. It'll happen when it happens and then you do it. But the more commonly accepted and the more appropriate explanations say that intidhar al-faraj is the preparation for this relief, and to anticipate this relief through both faith and action. And thus, therefore, if I know that the goal of the Imam is that this religion is one that will be the one that will overcome all others and will be the one that is established in this society, then I begin the example of it now, and I build out that community and I build out that future that the Imam will establish in this society. So hence this becomes an important discussion. That how do I become the people of the Imam? I become the people of the Imam by preparing for that lifestyle and that example that the Imam establishes. And thus the answer of why do we need to do this? Why? The Imam will do it when he comes. Well, Baba, do you want to be known as the people who are the people of the Imam? Then this is when you do it. This is when you establish the example of what the Imam will teach in this society. So, understanding that this is something we want to do, what are the principles? What are the goals that a virtuous community achieves? Understanding these goals will give us a direction over how do we implement this in society. Today we talk about what is the goals of this virtuous community. Tomorrow we will describe the attributes of the people of the virtuous community. In this, we understand that there are four major things that this community, if it is to be a virtuous community, has to establish. That these four things cannot be missing. If they are missing, then we have not yet become that virtuous community. So 4 subjects, 4 salawat. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The first of these elements that's necessary for a community to be established in the example of what the Ahlul Bayt and the Anbiya intended and what it means for this to be the religion of humanity and society is that the first and foremost thing that the society has to embody is that it establishes the proof of Almighty Allah, of the example of Allah in front of humanity. The overarching theme of faith and the purpose of faith is the acknowledgement of Allah. And that's every Nabi that came, every Imam that came, and we refer to them as Hujjatullah, the authority of Allah on this earth, was the example that they manifested the proof that Allah is present, and that they showed that Allah is there as a creator and is affiliated and associated with every task. The nature of humanity and society is that we become overcome by what's around us in the materialism of life, constantly. That it's very hard to sometimes think about Allah when I have a car insurance bill to pay. Or it's very hard to think about Allah when I have to go to work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. Or I'm overcome by this materialism of society that is essential for humanity to exist, and that's very true. But it's important in this entire process that if I am part of this virtuous community, that my actions continue to point back to Allah, and everything is under the guidance and awareness of Allah first and foremost. And that this was the exact example that the Anbiya established of reminding humanity about the example that Allah is present, that the A'immah went through about showing the prioritization of Allah over everything else. And that us, the people who want to be associated with the Ahlul Bayt and the Anbiya, make it a priority that Allah is a cornerstone of our life. In this day and age and in this society, sometimes it's hard to imagine that how do I do this? How do I practically do this, that the example of Allah is always present with me? How do I do this, that I teach society that the priority is Allah? And sometimes it comes down to the fundamental of talking about Allah. Now, I don't mean in the sense that, for example, you have to beat people over the head with, hey, let me talk to you about Allah today. No. But rather the subtle differences that come into our behavior and mannerism because Allah is a part of my life. Shall I give you an example? You guys are okay? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I apologize, can we move forward one more time, please? I'm sorry. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad. Have you ever heard somebody who comes to you and says, good luck? Good luck. The most difficult thing for me sometimes is, especially when I started thinking about this, right? I was blessed that, right, on Fridays I would get to see my parents in the morning, and then from there I would go to Salat al-Jum'ah. And for 5 years I've had this tawfiq that alhamdulillah Allah gave me the ability that I get to see my parents, and then I get to go to Jum'ah. And I remember this one morning distinctly, as I'm leaving the door, and I'm like, okay, Khuda Hafiz, Mijaro, I'm going. My mom yells, okay, good luck. And I thought to myself, and I said, wait, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to Salat al-Jum'ah, I'm going to the dhikr of Allah, why do I need luck? What's the significance of this luck? It wasn't intentional. If I have goodness in me, it's because of my parents. If I have this tawfiq in my life, it's because of my parents. I'm not trying to say my parents, for example, are mulhideen or have gone astray or anything. No. But it's this consciousness that sometimes is missing from us, that everything has to point back to Allah. My mother's intention was to give me dua. But she gave me dua in the example of how society promotes goodness with each other. Not the example of the way we should be promoting goodness with each other. That consciousness is pointing back to Allah and the power of Allah in all of our affairs. And sometimes we miss this concept because we're caught up in society. But for this to change, we have to change in the awareness of this. There's like a famous example of this, a man, he says to his wife, I'm going to go buy some groceries, I'll be right back. His wife says to him, Inshallah. He says, what inshallah? He says, listen, I have the money in my pocket, the shop's right downstairs, I'll exit the building, buy the groceries and come right back up. What inshallah? Inshallah is not here. The woman says, okay, fine, inshallah. The guy walks out of the building. As soon as he walks out, he trips. Someone helps him up, robs him. And then he looks around, dazed and confused. Now he's hurt, and he has no money, and he has no keys. So instead of buying anything, he goes right back up to the apartment. And again, his keys are stolen too. So he knocks on the door. And the wife becomes surprised. Who's knocking on the door? She says, who is it? He replies and says, it's your husband, inshallah. Meaning even simple things. if you exclude Allah from the equation, how can you be righteous? This is where that idea of pointing back to Allah, that the first example and responsibility of us as building a virtuous community is always having the cognizance and awareness Allah is present in part of our life and being able to talk about it appropriately. There are many places where it is appropriate to talk about it. If it's ever happened to you that you went to a shop and they gave you too much money back, or they didn't charge you for something, it's a great moment to explain that I believe in Allah, because you go back to the shopkeeper and say, hey, you gave me too much. Or, hey, I didn't pay for this. And they're like, oh, you almost got lucky there. It's like, no. I believe in God. I can't eat what I don't pay for because Allah is always watching. God is a part of my life. That why would I take advantage of you when the one who is aware of me would then punish me for that action? It's a beautiful way of teaching society that expects goodness from me, not because, well, I'm a nice guy, or I like you, or I'm afraid of you. No, you're not part of my equation. Allah is part of my equation. Allah is part of my fundamental. And that's why one of the fundamentals of this community, if we are to build a virtuous community, it has to be around the presence that Allah is a part and Allah is who we point back to, and establishing consistently the authority and the presence of Allah in life. That as society looks at simple things, we look at the presence of Allah in everything. The second of these points and attributes of the goals of this virtuous community, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Establishing and identifying the ideological and religious authority and leaders of Islam in theory and in practice. This is a concept that says that not anyone and not everyone has the right to speak for Islam. That the authority of Islam has to be given to the one who is mustahiq for this authority. This is a difference in the fundamentals across Islam that exist today. Then when we take a look at all the various sects of Islam, the process of defining religious authority is different in each category. Some who say it's necessary, some who refuse to believe it's necessary, and some who say that it goes back to luck. Right? If you take a look and you see the establishment of the Khilafat, there are 4 or 5 different ways in which the Khilafat is established in society. Some by, for example, election, some by, for example, shura, some by, for example, direct appointment, meaning that there's a variety of different ways that it could possibly happen that you become an authority of society, and you become then, once that happens to you, then Allah says, well, okay, if it's you, why not you, and we'll help you then. But no, our belief is that this concept is something that is both divinely appointed and has to be divinely asked for. And that leadership has to return back to that format constantly and to no other format. When Allah, for example, then describes وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْسَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ, that everything has been organized under a manifest and clear imam. When we see, for example, that everybody will be known by their imam, يَوْمَ نَدْعُو كُلُّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. Meaning that Allah has already, when I understand that Allah is present, Allah has created a structure in society that I have to find and I have to follow, and that is that the divine concept of leadership, Allah has dictated and said that it exists, it is the priority by which you will be known on the Day of Judgment, and that it is a desirable trait. وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. In the dua of Ibrahim that's made in Surah Furqan, Ibrahim, Rabbi habli azwajna wa dhurriyatana qurrata a'yun waj'alna lil muttaqina imama, and make from us the imam of the pious people. That if Ibrahim is making this dua as a Nabi, then it's an indication to say that leadership is not something that anyone can have and anyone can take, but no, rather that, for example, the virtuous community has to acknowledge and say that Allah has appointed a system of leadership, and all of our actions have to take guidance from that system of leadership to present and to show that we are an identity and a community that is established under the authority of Allah and aware of the presence of Allah. The third of these points, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. How much time do I have? What time do we have to finish by? What time do we finish? We have, oh, you guys are stuck with me for a while, huh? Okay, no, I need to know how quickly I need to go through some of these points. The third of these attributes that we simplify down of what it means to build a virtuous community is that the attribute and the goal of the virtuous community, it is that it is the one that guards and defends Islam by preserving the Islamic philosophy, government, society, and every individual that's part of the society. This is a really interesting concept that especially as Americans we have to be conscious of. And this is a much longer conversation. Why? Because American culture is individualistic. And I say that very simply, but it's actually a very thorough and detailed problem that we have as an individualistic society. And there are places, especially in major metropolitan areas, that you see it more so than you see it, for example, in other locations. That it's about as long as I'm okay, what do I have to do with you? That I have an obligation to myself before I have it to you. I didn't realize this myself until I left New York. Because in New York, you don't pay attention to anything going on around you. Like literally, somebody could be dying next to you, and as long as you're not dying, you just keep moving. And that's the culture that you're raised in, is that somebody's calling a name, it's not my name because you're not talking to me because I don't expect you to be there, so I don't listen to you. So especially when I left New York and I went to other parts of America, I was very astounded by the culture that outside of major metropolitans, people actually talk to each other. They socialize, they pay attention to each other. One of the jokes that they made about one of the places that I went to is that here people will help you even if you tell them not to. I'm like, Baba, I will never tell you to help me, go away. Why? Because the idea is that the individual needs to be complete himself. This individualism plays in how we look at ourselves and how we look at society. And this is why Eastern concept of this and Western concept. Western concept is individualism, and this is really a very long conversation about, it points back to many of the issues that we have in our communities, that individualistic perspective, an individualistic view of ourselves versus a communal view of yourself. In an individualistic society, when you talk about yourself, you talk about, I am very smart, I am very good at math, I am someone who likes machines. And you define yourself in a perspective that looks at you as an individual and looks at what you can do in your capability, and that's what defines you as a person. A collective society, we look at ourselves in relationship to the whole. And we look at what is the value that I add to society, and that defines me as a person. That a person who comes from a collective culture talks about themselves in light of, for example, I work well as part of a team. I helped our community be on time. And you look at what do I do that helps everybody in society and community, and that's what you look at as your defining characteristic. The nature of Western society is promote the individual, not the community. And it's not something that's done, for example, it used to be done very casually, but now it's done very structurally. Think about everything in Instagram, TikTok, social media, whatever platform you're using. It's all about, what do I show about myself? What can I do? What makes me have an appeal? This type of mentality is the promotion of the nafs and of the self. The danger of promoting that self is that the self is never satisfied. And the entire purpose of Islam is to teach you to control your nafs. But an individualistic society is the promotion of the nafs. And this becomes really problematic in how do we establish a good virtuous community where, for example, the nafs rules supreme and is the authority over everything that exists. This is one of the most important background issues that us as a community have to take a look at to see how do we overcome this individualism. The example that I give of this to show that it affects our society is, has it ever happened to you, you're standing in Salatul Jama'ah, the first prayer finishes, and some people get up and they leave. And now you have gaps. Or for example, namaz is about to start, قَدْ قَامَتِ الصَّلَاةِ, Everybody stands up and there are gaps. And what happens? Nobody moves. And someone stands up and says, please move forward, please fill in the gaps, fill in the gaps. And we wind up begging people to move forward. That's individualism, to say that the spot that I chose is my spot. Why should I leave my spot? Somebody else can leave their spot. The collective approach would be to say that the jama'ah, the hay'at al-jama'ah, means that the lines are full, that this is what Allah likes to see. What's the value of my spot if the jama'ah doesn't look correct? This attribute is one of the largest elements of prevention of standing up for justice and what's right. That I look at what's in my interest, not in what's in the interest of Islam or what's bigger than me. And this is one of the most important issues that us as a society or a community in the West has to constantly compete with and come back to the values of Islam that look at what's good for all of us, don't look at what's good for the individual. This is such an important concept that when we look at the seerah of Ahlul Bayt, we see this constantly come up, example after example after example. Whether you take a look at the attribute of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, after the shahadat of the Holy Prophet, he doesn't look at what's my right, he looks at what's right for Islam. It wasn't an easy thing for him to do. But what did he do? He saw that Islam needed preservation, and more than him presenting his haqq to society, he needed to protect the message of Islam. Do you know how difficult it was? He describes himself, he says in Khutbat al-Shaykh, he says, for 25 years, it was as if there was a thorn in my eye and a bone stuck in my throat. But I was patient. Look at the attribute of our second Imam, Imam Hassan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. When he gives up the khilafah, he gives up the khilafah for the preservation of Islam and mu'mineen. The close companions of Ahlul Bayt used to come and say things to Imam Hassan, As-salamu alayka ya mudhill al-mu'mineen. My salam to you, the one who disgraced the mu'mineen. And Imam Hassan would take them and sit them down and say, I didn't disgrace the mu'mineen, I saved them. I found in you people a weakness that if I took you to battle against Muawiyah in that instance, all of you would have been wiped out on this earth and Islam would not have remained. So therefore I became patient and I preserved all of you the same way the Safina of Nuh preserved the believers in that time. Our fifth Imam would explain and say that there is nothing that was done better on this earth than what my forefather Imam Hassan did by preserving the mu'mineen in that condition. But look what he did. He had the right, he had the authority, but he forewent that process because the protection of Islam demanded looking at what was better for everyone as opposed to looking at what was better for him, or what was his authority, what was his right, what was the demonstration of his character in that situation. The same is what we take a look at in the example of Karbala. That the preservation of the life of Imam Hussain was simply to say, yeah, sure, Yazid, you can be in charge. But what does the Imam do? He says, no, that the preservation of the message of Rasulullah requires that someone stands up firm against this tyrant, stands up firm against this man, and establishes and says that mithli la yubai' mithluhu. One like me does not do bay'ah of one like him. Each of these examples and the subsequent examples, because you'll take a look and you'll see that all of the A'immah in their relationship with political authority behave very differently. You have, for example, Imam Hussain who stands up, Imam Hassan who abdicates, Imam Ali who bears patiently through these people. Then you have our fourth Imam, fifth Imam, sixth Imam who have nothing to do with authority, no association with governments. And then you go so far as to say that you have Wali al-Ahad, the Imam Rada, who becomes a successor. All of these different positions that the A'immah take are not a reflection of their personality or their desires. No, the desire and the personality of the Imam always wants the exact same thing, which is the preservation of Islam regardless of the situation, regardless of the sacrifice that they personally have to make. They look at what's in the interest of Islam and make sure that Islam perseveres, that Islam remains, and that the entity of Islam is not lost. One of the important elements that we talk about when we want to become a community that is reflective of the teachings of Islam is that what can we give up from our personality? What's the effect that I take on myself as long as the message of Islam persists? And it protects the individual, it protects the society, and it protects the message in its entirety. All of these elements become a necessity for us to achieve this goal of defending both from foreign invasion and internal invasion. All of these threats that come to Islam, you see that the Ahlul Bayt teach in different formats to protect from them. These are against the governments. But look and see, for example, when we take a look at Hadith Mufaddal. Imam Sadiq teaches his companion Mufaddal how to stand up to atheism, how to present an ideological difference to atheism and preserve the message of Islam. You see, for example, in the time of Imam Rada, where he stands up to those who were the philosophers and the agnostics of the time. You see the debates between the Ahlul Bayt and the Christians of the time and the Jews of the time. Why? That the preservation of the message of Islam stands up against all of these other opportunities and threats that people look at, and explains what is the true position of Islam. Meaning, us as a community, one of the conclusions we have to come to, that if we want to follow this example, is that always look at what's the interest of Islam rather than what's the interest of me. Look at, instead of an individualistic perspective of what can I do and how can I show my devotion, is how do I promote the correct message of Islam? How do I attach value to the message of Islam? One of the ways that we're falling short in this, you guys are okay? I have one more example. I have a little bit of time still. You guys are stuck with me. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Is in our planning for the next generations, we're missing an element of scholarship. That there is more need in our societies than there are scholars to fill this role. And what's happening is two things. One is that the answer to this question is, Baba, I can't do it. It's not going to be me. For example, no, I can't do it. But instead of just thinking about if I can do it, or you should do it, or he should do it, or she should do it, us as a virtuous community haven't set up the infrastructure to find those that can and promote them. Even now, there's no system of support in our communities to add scholarship to our community. We haven't built any infrastructure. Today, if you wanted to go and study about Islam, you do it as a solo project on your own. You have to have the commitment, pal. You have to have the resources. You have to build out your own process of how you're going to manage this. And it's great that you do it, but I got nothing to offer you. And the same is true, and very honestly, the same is true as, for example, the idea of female scholarship. Our communities, as they're building up today, we need female scholarship. I'm not the one to teach a girl how to tie a hijab. It's not going to, I can't. I can tell you it's important, but I'm not that physical example. We haven't set those physical examples in our society. We haven't promoted this concept. Why? Because I can't do it, so it's not my problem then. It's somebody else's problem. We didn't look at the idea of building out the infrastructure for Islam. We looked at what is my capacity and what can I do, and if I can't do it, then why are we talking about it? And this is one of the mistakes that, for example, in building this community that defends Islam, that protects Islam, preserves the entities of Islam, it won't be an individualistic approach to say that, oh, everything's on me, or if I can't do it, then it's somebody else's problem. It's going to be collectively that what do we as a community do to build out the infrastructure that makes sure Islam persists in its true value and position. And this was the teachings of Ahlul Bayt, that they did this in every environment that they came. And they presented these examples by preserving, whether through themselves or teaching their companions to address each of these different environments and situations to make sure that Islam persists. The fourth of these points, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. In setting the goals of what our community is that the goal of this community is to be the role of the excellent examples in society. That Islam doesn't just make a person good, it makes them the best. And that the role of, for example, being exposed to Islam and having access to Islam is that there is no better example than you in society, and the promotion of that example and the thought of that example. This is really hard sometimes, because we look at convenience in society and we want to be like everybody else. Really simple example. You go to the grocery store, you take a shopping cart, you use the shopping cart, you come back to your car, you put your things in the car. What do you do with the cart? Do you leave it there in the middle of the parking lot? Do you push it away from your car and hope that it doesn't hit anybody else? Or do you actually take the time that I have to go put this cart back to where it belongs? Sometimes one of the most painful things when you're doing this is that you're putting the cart back and the person next to you who you're walking by just throws the cart and leaves. And you imagine it's hot, it's uncomfortable, I'm done with this, I'm not affected by the consequence of this. Then who cares? They hire people to put these carts away. They hire people to do this stuff. Why is it my problem? But look at the example that we established by saying that my Islam teaches me to have nidam. My Islam teaches me to be the example of right even when society isn't following that example. My Islam teaches me that I take care of others whether or not they've asked me to or whether or not they deserve it. But that rather it is a necessity that Islam teaches me as a fundamental that I am the best example of what is right, and I am the best example of staying away from what is haram. To understand this, we take a look at one of the hadith of our sixth Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Salli ala Muhammad. Our sixth Imam spends a lot of time talking about this concept of being the best example in society. تكونوا زينا لنا ولا تكونوا شينا علينا. Be a source of adornment and beauty for us, and do not be a source of disgrace for us, our Imam would explain. In one of the longer narrations in teaching us how to do this, he says, عليكم بالصلاة في المساجد وحسن الجوار للناس وإقامة الشهادة وحضور الجنائز إنه لا بد لكم من الناس إن أحدا لا يستغني عن الناس في حياته وَالنَّاسُ لَا بُدَّ لِبَعْضِهِمْ مِنْ بَعْضٍ. Imam Sadiq, in trying to teach this concept of how he wants us to behave in a society, how he wants us to interact in a society, he says, I advise you to offer prayers in the masajids of even those who don't agree with your school of thought, and show good neighborliness to all people, testify for the rightful parties, and attend their funerals, whether or not they agree with you or not. It's not to say that this funeral is from mine, so I have to go. But anyone who dies, that they have the right of this. And he says, certainly you can never abandon others, and no one can live without other people at any time during their lifetime, since people have an indispensable need for each other. This statement of the Imam is an example to say, don't just look at what my need is and what I want in society, but be that example that promotes the good qualities in all of society and teaches them that what the best of behavior and attributes is that should be present. That take that time to look at the world and do what's right and what's good, not what's convenient. Not what's better for me, but what's better for humanity and society, to be the best example. That it is this Islam that when I live this value, there is no one in comparison to us. Which is why he would say that even if there was a 10 of 10,000 people, and there is someone with better character than our Shia in this town, then he's not our Shia. Our Shia are those who there is no one with better character than them. This exemplar, this idea that you are the best of society, is one of the conclusions that each of us should be promoting within ourselves, and that's it. When we go out, it's not just about the fact that our center is clean, or that we come on time, we leave on time, or that our parking lots are organized. What was the benefit to humanity from this? Did we change society? Were we something that brought goodness into humanity? Were we something that, for example, humanity benefited by the fact that Shia live in this town? Did we change for a better society? This is one of the attributes that, for example, becomes really important. And the reason we're missing it is that we came from a very insular culture. Our generations that are one generation or two generations back, they came from environments where it was only Islam. So what do? When they came here, they were afraid of everybody because they hadn't interacted with them. So the reaction was, shh, just take care of your own. Don't worry about these other people. They're not Muslim. They're not Muslim is the more reason why we need to take care of them and show them what does Islam give us in our lives and become the best example in society. Which is why the next phase of growth for our communities, when we want to build a virtuous community, is not just what happens inside of these four walls, but what does our community represent outside of these four walls? What do we do that shows the world what is Islam? And the Imam would explain, call to us through your character, not through your words. It's not about the beauty of your speech. That's not the most effective way to teach people about what Allah wants and what is the benefit of having Allah in a God-centric lifestyle. It's through this akhlaq and this character and mannerism that this becomes one of the most important things that we need to establish in our lives so that we can serve the cause of Islam. Finally, we end, why should we do all of this? All of this work that we're describing, living a God-centric lifestyle, going out and putting leadership in its proper authority, going through all of these different elements, what's the benefit of this? To understand this, we take a look and we see the verse of Holy Quran where Allah says, وَلَقَدْ كَتَبْنَا فِي الزُّبُورِ مِن بَعْدِ ذِكْرِ أَنَّ الْأَرْضَ يَرِثُهَا عِبَادِيَ الصَّالِحُونَ. That we have a certainty that Allah has guaranteed, and He says, certainly we wrote in the Psalms, which came after the reminder, my righteous servants shall inherit the earth. This is another one of the promises that Allah makes in the Quran, that the authority of this earth will be placed in the righteous hands. If I have yaqeen and certainty of that, how do I show that I am one of the righteous people and that I have an affiliation with the righteous and that I want to be with the righteous when they are the ones who shall have the authority of this earth? It's through this character and behavior before they come. It's through establishing the example in society that will make humanity accept the authority of those who are the authority of Allah on this earth. If we are foreign to society and humanity, that we have not lived the values of Ahlul Bayt, and the Ahlul Bayt become present, who's going to believe you? You come and you say, yes, yes, I knew this Imam, I have loved this Imam all my life, I lived his values. Society will turn to you and say, no, we saw in him justice, we saw in him equity, we saw in him goodness. You never did that for us, he did that. This is why one of the important elements is that today you learn to develop these attributes in yourself so that tomorrow, when you claim that I'm their Shia, I'm one who lived this life the way he's teaching you to, the world looks and says, yes, you're truthful. We've seen you do the righteous actions. We've seen you focus on Allah. We've seen you live those values. And that's something we have a problem with today. Why? Have you ever noticed somebody who, when they go outside, Ali becomes Al, Muhammad becomes Mo, Mike. I've seen Mike as well too. And then when they come back here, it's Assalamu alaikum, brother, Alhamdulillah, mashallah. When you take that Alhamdulillah, mashallah outside now and you do that in front of somebody else and say, what happened to you? You don't behave like this with me before. Or you take somebody from the Alhamdulillah, mashallah community and take them outside and all of a sudden they hear you as Mo, what happens? There's disbelief. Oh, you're Mo? You're Al? That split in personality, there's only one dominant personality. If you want your dominant personality to be with the Imam, that has to be who you are all the time. It can't be that I'm with the Imam when I'm here and mashallah, subhanallah, and when I go outside, I'm with somebody else. It doesn't work. Which is why we have this opportunity to acknowledge what are the things that we have to focus on. What are the elements we need to strengthen in our society and community so that we have one personality everywhere. And that's something we're struggling with as a community of Shias in North America. And all of us here, We're living in a country that promises assimilation in 3 generations. Sociologically speaking, 3 generations, and you're more American than you are where you came from. Your primary identity is America. If you want to preserve your generations, you have to figure out what are the things that I have to focus on to make sure that my children stay attached to this religion. And it is difficult. But Allah has created for us wasail and processes that make this easier. And one of those processes that makes this easier to come to this unified identity is this message of Karbala and being attached to the dhikr of Ahlul Bayt. This idea of being attached to the message of Ahlul Bayt is not something new, but rather it's something qadeem. It's something that anyone who has come across with these Ahlul Bayt has fallen in love with them and been attached to them. Tonight, we typically mention the advent of the Imam to the land of Karbala. And that on the 2nd of Muharram is when the Imam reaches this land of difficulties. But understand something. The attribute of Karbala being Karbala was not new that when Imam got there it became Karbala. No, this was a land of difficulties and problems and sorrows long before. One of the things that's discussed that says that when you look at Karbala and you look at the Furat that runs through Karbala, it's called Al-Qama. That this isn't the true Furat, but this is a piece of the Furat, the tributary that comes through it. Al-Qama as a name is not something that was hadith that came up recently. Rather, even hundreds of years before the event of Karbala, those who had piety in their hearts would be impacted by this earth, such to say that all of the Anbiya have wept on this land, have suffered through this land, that even the pious people would go through difficulty. It's reported to say that Al-Qama was a king who, when he passed through this land, his heart became overcome with the grief on this land. And he asked his advisors and he asked the knowledgeable men, why is it that this land makes my heart cry? And they explained to him that we have heard from the Anbiya that there will come a prophet of Allah in this land, there will come a scion, a remainder of the prophet of Allah in this land, and he will die in abuse and difficulty in this land, and therefore there is grief, karb wa bala, that is felt in this land. And that King Al-Qama would say that he will die thirsty, he will die alone. I will be the one who will make sure that water comes through this land, so that the children of the Anbiya are not tortured in this land. Oh Al-Qama, if you would have seen how the enemies separated the son of Zahra from Al-Qama in this land, from that body of water that bore your name in that time. And they said that we will let the dogs drink from this land, but the children of Rasulullah will not drink from this land. Now understand, when you see that even people who weren't associated with this Ahlul Bayt find sorrow and grief in this land, now understand when Imam Hussain comes upon this land and his horse stops and he calls to the Banu Asad and he asks them, tell me the name of this place. And some say, هذا شط الفرات وهذا نينوى. And they mention name after name until eventually one old man from the Banu Asad says, Ya ibna Rasulullah, hada ismuha Karbala, that this is the land of difficulties and sorrows. As this mention is made, there is a lady who comes forward and says, oh my dear brother, when will we leave this place? Imam Hussain turns and says, oh my sister Zainab, why do you want to leave this place? She says, since we have entered this land, my heart has become uncomfortable. I am in a state of difficulty standing on this land. I don't want to be here anymore. Abu Abdullah would answer, oh Zainab, this is the last land upon which Hussain will stand. This is the final place where I shall not leave from this place after this. That this is that land that they describe the difficulties that Abu Abdullah faces, and that society and humanity had been preparing for this. Remember something, that there is a moment when Amir al-Mu'mineen, after the battle of Jamal, passes by this place. And they describe and say, the companions of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we saw Ali ibn Abi Talib get off from his horse, put his face on the cheeks on the ground of Karbala and weep and say, Ha huna, this is the place that the pious companions will be killed. This is the place where our children will be martyred. This is the place where our women will be widowed and taken prisoners. Amir al-Mu'mineen would prepare for this event as well too. Rasulullah would prepare for it, where he would tell Salama, I have been told of the shahadat of my son. I will give you sand from the land of Karbala, and when you see it turn to blood, know that my Hussain has been killed in this place. But it's not just the killing of Abu Abdullah that is sorrowful for us in this land. But look at the example of what the sacrifices of Abu Abdullah presented in this land. To see that there is a son like Akbar who comes to his father and he says, Oh father, why do I see you in a state of difficulty as we enter this place? Imam Hussain replies and he says, Oh son, that we are in such a place that difficulties will overcome us, that problems will become associated with us, that loss will come to us in this land. Look at the nature of that child who has been raised with character, that he turns to his father and he says, Oh father, if we are to die, will we die on the path of Allah and Islam? And Abu Abdullah is forced to reply, yes, certainly we will be on the path of Haqq. Then Ali al-Akbar replies, then what care do we have that if we die or if death comes to us? Oh Akbar, if you knew how hard the death of a grown son is on a father, you wouldn't ask such a question. If you knew that thirst of 3 days that you will have, that thirst that will be so extreme that when Abu Abdullah will take your brother Asghar to the battlefield, there is a statement Abu Abdullah makes. He says, this child is thirsty for 3 days. He will certainly die because of this thirst now. Don't let him die thirsty, rather give him some water. And yet still the mal'oon would not give them water. This is that land of difficulties upon which now Abu Abdullah has reached. Ala la'natullahi ala al-qawm al-zalimin. Wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ridan biqada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. Ya Allah, bihaqqi Fatima wa abiha wa ba'liha wa baniha wa sirr al-mustawdi'a fiha. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, we have gathered here with hajat by the right of these tears in our eyes and the masa'ib of Ahl al-Bayt. Oh Allah, fulfill our hajat. Those amongst our families, our communities that are suffering through disease and sickness, give shafa'at to the mu'mineen wherever they are. Ya Allah, give aman to the believers wherever they are. Ya Allah, hasten the appearance of Sahib al-Zabat. This Friday has come and passed, and we have waited for our Imam, and we have left this day without the dhuhur of our Imam. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Ya Allah, entitle us the ziyarat of Abu Abdullah in this world, and the shafa of Imam Hussain in the hereafter. One surah Fatiha for today's sponsors and all of our marhumeen. Ma'as salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Matim Hussain.
Ya Hussain, 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 Ya Hussain. Treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your seeds are sown. Treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your seeds are sown. Everyone. Treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your seeds are sown. Treachery repeating in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your seeds are sown. Kufans your own to Hussain, inviting him to come guide you. Muslim went there with your sons, his mission of peace and friendliness. Allegiances pledged to Hussain, your faith wavered and bought away. Karbala, your Caesar son, treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your Caesar son, everyone, treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your Caesar son, when the prayer finished in Kufa, Muslim glanced back at the crowd. At the start it was heaving, now it is so empty. Treacherous people, where are you? The ones who rode to Hussain. Karbala, your Caesar son, treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your Caesar son, honey host of Muslim was found, and he was beheaded. Muslim, now you too they found, in no time you're chained and bound. Muhammad, Ibrahim, your son, also martyred in Kufa. Karbala, your Caesar son, treachery repeating in Kufa, in the place where Ali had been slain. Karbala, your Caesar son, what now is your final wish? Ziyadat's Muslim as he dies. But Muslim until the last tries to arm Imam of the treachery. But Ziyad ignores your pleas, and Hussain sets out for Kufa. Karbala, your Caesar son, treachery plays on in Karbala, started by those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy, treachery plays on in Karbala, started by those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy, Al-Atash became a frequent cry, the desert heat unbearable. Sakina told the tent to rest, my uncle Abbas will bring us water. Fell Abbas down from the horse, with no hands to protect his foe. Karbala, the tragedy, treachery plays on in Karbala, started by those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy, Kufa is what now have you caused? Akbar resembled the prophet, danced with thirsty as Hussain, a drop of water would take me far. On the battlefield he had no fear, but was struck down by a spear. Karbala, the tragedy, treachery plays on in Karbala, started by those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy, when Imam called out for help in grief, As-Saghar shook his cradle. A 6-month child suffered the thirst. Can you spare him some water? None would quench the infant's thirst. Hurmala gave him an arrow. Karbala, the tragedy, treachery plays on in Karbala, started by those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy, over 72 close friends and kin had gone and never returned. I am the grandson of the prophet, you have seen me hold him high. What have we done to be massacred? Do you not have any conscience? Karbala, tragedy. Treachery plays on in Karbala. Started those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy. Treachery plays on in Karbala. Started those in Kufa. Karbala, the tragedy. Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain, Ya Hussain.
Salawat. Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Hussain, Mawla Hussain. Everyone. Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Hussain, Mawla Hussain. In your haram, here I am here, under your dome, breathing your air. Zainab's heart, oh Ali's dear, Taha's son, Fatima's tears. Stand by my side in the grave, Hussein, my soul, come to save with these tears. I have no fear that you will be there for me. My Mawla, my Sultan, Hussein, you're my Quran. Don't leave me, come save me. Ya Hussein, come aid me. Even from my grave I am calling your name. Hussein, Mawla Hussein.
Hussein, Mawla Hussein. Hussein, Mawla Hussein.
Mawla Hussein. Empty hands, where are my deeds? If you do not intercede. On the day when mothers will abandon the children they feed. And when the earth and the sun collide is when everyone will be called by their Imam, and an angel will raise the alarm. My Mawla, my Sultan, Hussein, you're my Quran. Don't leave me, come save me. Ya Hussein, come aid me. Even on that day I am calling your name. Hussein.
Mawla Hussein. Hussein, Mawla Hussein. Hussein, Mawla Hussein. Hussein.
Mawla Hussein. And when the sand on me is thrown, and when my loved ones have all gone, left me alone in this strange home, Hussein, you won't leave me alone. And when the grave is crushing, breaking my chest, come listen, do you remember the days I beat my chest calling out your name? My Mawla, I'm certain you won't leave me hurting. I left him who needs me and asked him don't leave me. Even on that day I am calling your name. Hussein.
Mawla Hussein. Hussein, Mawla Hussein. Hussein, Mawla Hussein. Hussein.
Mawla Hussein. My guardian, watch over me, my medicine, my remedy. Standing alone, who's watching you on that day under the heat? Askar resting on your chest, arrow resting in his neck. Mawla, Mawla, Ya Hussein, where was I to share your pain? My Mawla, I'm certain. Hussein, Mawla Hussein, Hussein, Mawla Hussein, Hussain, Mawla Hussain, Hussain, Mawla Hussain. Salawat.
Inshallah, we will be doing Salat al-Maghrib in about 6 or 7 minutes. We'll do Jama'ah both in this hall and the in the blue hall, followed by the Urdu program. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.